Hello students, I am Dr. L.K. Das, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the Department of HSS, IIT Roorkee. Welcome to another lecture of the NPTEL course Power and Politics in Contemporary India, a Sociological View. In today's lecture, we will discuss about how gender roles are performed in the legal discourse as well as in customary laws and personal laws. And this is a very crucial issue that I wanted to discuss in today's lecture because of two reasons. One is that gender and laws related to women or men-woman relationships have always been contested. But when it becomes a plural order, then it is the intersection of state law, personal law and customary laws or customary norms that dominate or generate tensions on women's rights and the constitutional provision of equality before law. So why do I say that this is a topic that I wanted to discuss? It's because, as I discussed in the previous class, we are a patriarchal society, or we are a predominantly patriarchal society. So women's rights are considered to be secondary to the rights of men. We are also a society which has very strong male preference or very strong male child preference. What does this mean? It means that if it's a one child policy or a two child policy we have, or it is brought by the state as an optional voluntary kind of act, then many a times if the first child is a girl, then parents try for a second child, and it is a son, then they stop there. But if the first child happens to be a boy, I am not saying this is a universal case, but many a times parents stop there itself. Or if they would like to have another child, then there also they prefer to have a girl. But if it is a boy, it's better than anything else. So what happens in this case is that our state law prescribes for equality, because that is what is enshrined in the Constitution of India. But our personal laws are looking at the patriarchal structures and interpreted through the patriarchal structures. And these personal laws are also guiding customary norms. So in that case, when all three of them come together, so the issues of gender, issues of sides of conflict become significant for both sociology of law as well as political sociology. Because irrespective of whether you follow class, irrespective of whether you follow caste, irrespective of whether you follow religion or any cult, women always remain women. Gender cannot be negated here. So gender will always remain. So post-colonial states aspire for the universal equality, but at the same time, in the name of plural or legal plurality, they also prescribe to customary norms. So in this lecture, we will look at the tension between all three of them through specific cases. Now, one of the theoretical lens is that of weak and strong legal pluralism, which essentially means that if it is strong legal pluralism, that means there are watertight compartments and one cannot infringe on the other one. But if it is a weak legal pluralism, that means one kind of legality triumphs over other kind of legality. And in the context of India, particularly a post-colonial country like India, the colonial codification froze fluid customs into rigid patriarchal formulas, which are legitimized by authentic religious or community law. So, what does this mean? It means that, as we had discussed before, in the pre-colonial period, or the moment we say something as uncodified customary practices. Now, practices are something that can shift from village to village, household to household, and site to site. But when they are codified, that means they are written down. This is how it was done. This needs to be done in this particular way. And a more open-ended kind of legality becomes a strict, religiously identified law. So that creates restrictions on the way certain customary laws are, or certain customary traditions and certain customary practices are interpreted. Baxi argues that in the Indian legal system, here we are talking about Upendra Baxi, he argues that in the Indian legal system, access, performance and legitimacy disproportionately harms marginalized groups seeking redress. Now, as the state has a dual character in which it is both the provider of the constitutional rights and at the same time it also destroys those rights. Women face multiple barriers because there is family resistance, discriminatory personal law and institutional incapacity within formal courts. Family resistance because take the case of land distribution within a family or right over property. Now, if father has two children, one male, one female, in a patriarchal society, the norm is that all the property P that is there moves to the male child. There is no question of the female except what she gets as dowry at the time of a marriage and all the other expenses that the parents are incurring on her for her education. Once the marriage is over, she is handed over to another family. That is what is called Kanyadan. Once there is a Kanyadan, that means everything changes for that woman. Now, if there is a change in this act, then this P has to be divided into two portions, P1 and P2. P1 will go to the man and P2 will go to the woman, or the male child and the female child. So, on paper this looks very progressive, which it is, but at the same time off paper in lived experiences, if P2 goes to the female child, that means the relationship between the male child and the female child will break forever, because the property is now getting transferred from one family to the other family. If everybody is doing it, then it is acceptable. But what if one family is doing it and the other family is not? So, in that case, the transfer of property is considered to be highly discriminatory for the first family. Now, in this scenario, while the family and its relationships are being looked at and its thoughts are going on, the people who are, or the individuals who are getting disadvantaged are the women, because if they can share the genes of their parents, then why it is not so in terms of property? So, this is another reason why dowry becomes a significant part. which also becomes something like Sridhan. A Sridhan is not just dowry, it's also about the jewelry and ornaments that she gets at the time of marriage. Now, this is a lot complex issue than what I am trying to narrate here, but suffice is to say is that when legal plural system, a plural legal system, they come face to face, then we have to look at this point of intersection, how they're intersecting, and what is it that is coming out of these intersections, because there are deeper tensions, and these deeper tensions prevail the way the laws are interpreted at a personal level, at a customary level. And at the same time, as we have discussed, there are somebody who are also repeat players and one shorters. Many times male religious leaders act as repeat players, whereas women happen to be one shorters, because religion in a God-fearing society like ours is very critical as well as overpowering. So repeat players means that whenever religious leaders speak, they interpret something as, we can say, about cultural threat. It is in our culture that the male child inherits the family and property of the father, not the female child. If now the female is taking it, that means the cultural norms of the Hindu family, of a Christian family, or a Muslim family, or a Buddhist family, Sikh family, or any of these families is getting breached. So, how not to breach it? They know whom to contact. They have people, or very powerful people, including lawyers, who would like to work for them. Women, on the other hand, are a little difficult there, because that is not how it works there. Because if one woman is standing up for her rights to inherit the property of her father, or half of the property of her father, that means she is threatening the entire patriarchal system on which our society works. In a recent autobiography written by the Booker Prize winner, the author Arundhati Roy, she speaks about her mother, as to how her mother became one of the symbols of resistance in the entire Malayali Syrian Christian society, because she challenged her own mother and her brother so that she can get half of the property. So she was ostracized, she was called names by a lot of people coming from the Syrian Christians in Kerala. But when she triumphed, she took revenge by throwing her brother out of the family home. So these are, and she discusses, Arundhati Roy discusses how the Syrian Christians are now navigating this law. They are doing so by making the daughters either write that they would not take anything, or dividing the property even before the daughter comes of age, in a way that she doesn't inherit anything out of her father's property. Now, this is where the book of law and what's happening in the on the field becomes very critical. So, personal laws could be highly transformatory, could be highly protective, but when they are always interpreted as any change to them as threat to culture or threat to religion, that means look at women there. Irrespective of whichever religion we're talking about, whenever it is about women inheriting anything, all religious leaders come together and deny that, because a powerful, articulate woman is a threat to any kind of religious leader or any kind of society which speaks in the language of conservativeness, or which gives emphasis to its conservative elites. Now, the case of Shah Bano is significant in this case because Shah Bano was one of the Muslim women in the 1970s and 1980s who challenged the patriarchal interpretation of the Muslim personal law and claimed that at the time of her separation from her husband or at the time of divorce, she should be entitled to alimony. Now, the Supreme Court of India gave a verdict in favor of Shah Bano. But then, as I said, religious leaders, right? They felt that such a verdict was destructive of the Muslim Personal Law Board and the way Muslims practice culture. So they mobilized, there was mass mobilization, and the former Prime Minister of India, the Rajiv Gandhi, capitulated to that and reversed the order of Supreme Court of India. Because of which it became highly controversial, and even now Shah Bano's case is exemplified in the way how men, when they come together, they work against the interests of women. Even in the recent past, we get to hear a number of stories on social media, on news channels about how women are killing their husbands because they have extramarital affairs, which happen to be a continuation of their premarital affairs. So now women should not be given, women's voices should not be heard because women are essentially evil and they are vile characters. So they are not only murdering their well, nice, sweet, caring husbands, they are also chopping their bodies into 100 parts and either packing them up in ice boxes, in blue colored boxes, canisters, or they are placing them in the big fridges or refrigerators. This completely negates the entire history of the feminist movement in this country, in which time and again it was proved that women are getting killed in the name of dowry. There is a very high number of the female infanticide as well as female feticide. That is the reason why the government of India has banned sex determination before a child takes birth. So what we see here is that although Shah Bano's case happened in the 1980s, but in a way conservative male leadership and social media is acting as loudspeakers for certain conservative ideas of how men and women should behave in a society. Women should not be given cell phones or mobile phones because through mobile phones they are getting mobile, they are speaking to a lot of people and they cannot be controlled. Girls should not be given cycles because if they get cycles they are going to become mobile. And at the same time, to come back to the case of Shah Bano, why should men provide for women even after divorce? There are now very high profile cases of certain cricketers in which their wives or ex-wives were targeted, were humiliated, dehumanized, and they were termed as gold diggers. In essence, that the men are nice and sweet, the women are the vile characters. And why do they require the several crores of rupees as alimony? Can't they work for themselves? Why do they want it? Now, why do they want it or why they do not want it? You need to go back, read the verdict on Shah Bano, which is available on the internet. It's a fascinating discussion from both the sides why something has happened, and why it was why this verdict went in favor of Shah Bano, but also read what happened after that. Secondly, judicial activism, particularly in the case of Vishakha as well as Shah Bano, tells us that in reality, many a times the judicial activism is not working out on the ground. In the previous classes, we had discussed the outcome of judicial activism in the form of judiocracy. But what we had not discussed that day and what we discussed today is that judicial activism has its limits. In the next class also we will continue this aspect with a case study of Chilika Bachao Andolan. But suffice to say that judicial activism or the judges have certain power to give certain verdicts, but the way it is implemented on the ground is entirely on the executive and the individuals, families and the society. If even progressive verdicts are not familiarized and implemented to its letter and spirit, then all these verdicts remain at the level of pen and paper. Rather, patriarchal practices would challenge them and get them nullified. The men's rights movement is going on right now. Pratiksha Baxi, as we had discussed before also, through her ethnographic work, looks at the culture of law and how this theaterization of the victimhoodness or victimization of survivors creates this hindrance for women to even go to a court even if they have been wronged. It could be because of family pressure, it could be because of social pressure, it could be because of pressure from the courts themselves. Who is going to represent them? How they are going to be represented? How many times they have to re-experience the same trauma? Whether it is in terms of property, in terms of violence against their bodies, or in terms of divorce laws. Now, within this societal pressure, we add mass media as well as social media, because both of them are, particularly social media, they are available to anybody and everybody, and anybody can speak anything there. Mass media, in the name of TRP, can destroy a woman's life, a woman's career. And we have number of cases in the recent past where we have seen how women have been victimized by the mass media just for the sake of TRPs. And it's not that this mass media and the victimization was done by the male anchors or infamous male anchors. They're also done by female anchors. Why? Because they get money out of it. So, custom law and Adivasi women is again a very significant aspect of the same kind of trajectory. Why? As we discussed, when there is rule of property versus rule of law. Now, Nandini Sundar argues that rule of property means that the state can take a community's property whenever and wherever it deems fit for development. Rule of law says that something has to be done for the people who are getting dispossessed. But what about what is beyond this rule of property and rule of law? We have learned that Adivasi women, unlike their caste counterparts, they are more autonomous. They go out of houses, they work, they have a lot more rights within their own customs than caste Hindu or caste any woman. But the moment they are dispossessed or displaced from the place they are living, what happens is that the new place may not have the same kind of structure. So now a woman who would go out in the the forest all alone or among other women, work the entire day, come back, go to the market, do all the work of the farming. The moment they are here, probably all those rights that she had or the customary rights that she had have been taken away from her. Now she is becoming a housewife, or now she is highly restricted to certain kind of roles. So that is the reason why what we see here is that women face a disproportionate amount of pressure when it comes to the problematic of the state law versus customary law versus personal law. That so most often than not, they are gendered outcomes of plural legal orders. So we have to be very careful when we glorify customary norms or personal laws, because the touchstone is how they are treating their women. The moment you realize that certain kind of norms are being interpreted in a particular way by whether progressive groups or conservative groups, go back to the touchstone of the women and how they are treated. So this is not just about men treating women badly, it's about how patriarchy works. And patriarchy goes beyond men and women relationships or men propagating something. It's an ideology, and this ideology is what creates structures and systems which make or break certain personal laws and customary norms. So in essence, what we need to understand is gender justice demands rethinking state engagement with custom, ensuring accountability to constitutional norms rather than just elite authority. So within this framework, how do women negotiate contradictory pressures from state law and community expectations is a foundational question that we need to address and need to think for ourselves. These are few references you can go through. Thank you.